So good afternoon, I'm Johana Gustawsson. I come from France, southern France, and I'm here in Kerala to talk about my book, Block 46, which was published by DC Books. I've been kindly invited by l'Alliance Française. Block 46 is it's my first novel. It was the first one that was published in 2015 in France. And it's very dear to me because it was inspired by the story of my family. My paternal grandfather, who became a very famous man in France because he organized the liberation of a concentration camp under Nazi time during the Second World War. His name was Simon Lagunas. And he was a very, very brave man who became a resistant and entered the camp and went out of it as victorious, because that camp had a very specific history, because it's not the Americans who liberated the camp. It's actually the heroes inside, men and women and children. So my grandfather had that very special history because he was a wood carver. He was no man who didn't have any specific education. And he was a humanist. And when I used to be a journalist and I started wanting to write something, started as a ghostwriter, and when it was my time to write and to be published on my own, I wanted to tell the story of my family. And it started by wanting to talk, not as an historian or as a journalist, but talk as a storyteller. A little bit about what happened to the people who came into the camp and how much it changed their life, because their lives were changed forever. And I decided to mix it with something a bit unusual, but I didn't realize at the time, but with some thriller elements. And to basically talk about a parallel between the industrialization of death, which is what the Nazis did, and extermination, and between serial killing, which is another way to exterminate, and to show that the most barbaric, were certainly the Nazis. So it's a book that then was followed with two other books that in English they were called Keeper and then Blood Song, where I have my two main investigators who are drawn to new horizons, and I'm sure that there will be more after that. But what was extremely satisfying with that book is that lots of young people came to me and made me realize that I served a duty of memory towards our history, the European history and the world history. Because the most important thing in such events is that we don't want it to happen again. And we need to keep the memory alive, to make our children, I have 3 sons, so I feel an extreme responsibility to make them understand that the errors committed in the past cannot happen again. We have to respect each other and to tolerate to another level. And I had very young, they were 16 in high school, who wrote emails to me after reading the book and telling me, you see, I didn't care much about those Hitler stuff and all those Nazi, but I read your book and then I realized how important it was. And then that young girl went on to reading a book that I mentioned actually in the opening of mine, which is about how Buchenwald concentration camp was organized. So yes, it's a book very dear to me, and I'm very happy to have shared with you the essence of its story. And I would like to wish a very happy anniversary to the Legislative Library. We're celebrating 100 years, so that is absolutely wonderful.